wonderful to be with you all this morning, because just as it's important for the students to connect and build relationships, it's important for us as staff as well. And yes, what you are looking at is a real snake around my neck. Her name is Hermie. She is my son Owen's pet snake, and she's here to help me teach you about the power of transformational change and how to shift from a crisis mindset to an opportunity mindset right now. You see, 7 years ago, I had a phobia of snakes. I grew up sharing a bedroom with my older sister, and she had a phobia of snakes. So I would often wake up in the middle of the night to hear her crying and screaming that there was a snake curled up at the bottom of our bed and it was gonna bite her or strangle her. I have a sensitive nervous system, so it developed by proxy a phobia of snakes. 7 years ago, I was also living in chronic pain. And my slide is not, oh, there we go. So that's what I was looking like. I had 2 kids under the age of 5. I felt like my husband and I were ships passing in the night. I was the weekend warrior, trying to balance it all, working mom, feeling like I was doing none of it well. And I carried this around with me. And Doug is here. He's a school psychologist colleague who can probably attest to this. It's called the back knobber 2, and I would use it daily to try to rub the knots that had formed in my back and my upper neck from dealing with so much stress and overwhelm. So what I'm painting a picture for you here is that 7 years ago, I was burning out on my own life. And then tragedy struck. Now, I'm not going to reveal all the hairy details here, but my family experienced a financial tragedy that allowed for all of the skeletons to come out of the closet. It was very unnerving. There was a lot of uncertainty. There were a lot of emotions flying. And we didn't know where things were going to go. What we knew, very similar to right now, was that it felt uncomfortable and that we would never, as a family, go back to our normal again. And just like what's happening now on the global scale and in the state of education, it turned out that we were able to look back, and I can look back now with this snake around my neck with confidence and clarity and say, oh, thank goodness for that crisis, because it offered us many gifts. And what I've learned, perhaps some of you are getting glimpses of this and experienced this yourself in your own life, that sometimes when you think everything is falling apart, it's actually falling into place. So what I've learned as I went through my own personal transformation, as I've studied transformation and change and helped individuals and organizations and groups through this process, is that there really is a process. There really is a structure and a framework, and it can provide a lot of certainty and security as we're going through this uncertain ride. Hermie really wants to stay out and play. So here's what the framework looks like. We have the old status quo, which quite frankly tends to involve a lot of denial and pretending like we're fine, it's fine. And then we have this foreign element that comes into play. So right now it's COVID-19, right now it's the George Floyd racial riots. People tend to have a lot of resistance because it's forcing us to change, and as humans, we don't really love to change. A lot of us think change is difficult. Some of us think it's terrifying. So we have resistance to the fact that now we have to make changes. It can feel like things are very chaotic. We get into desperation and clinging. We want to cling on to the old ways, how things used to be. And then eventually, when you're kind of at the rock bottom, right, folks will start to have new transformative ideas about, like Dr. Hartwig referred to, how we can go forward differently, how we're seeing the people in these presentations start to bring in new ideas. And people start to practice new skills, they start to innovate, they start to integrate those into their lifestyle, and then they get to this new status quo. And much like with me and my family, looking back, I'm like, oh, thank goodness for that crisis. It was such a gift. I now don't have a phobia of snakes. I'm now no longer in chronic pain. So this is great, right? When you're able to stand on that new plateau, but what is it like in the meantime? Like, how do we navigate? How do we cope when we're experiencing all of that uncertainty and chaos? So what I'm going to provide you with is 3 thoughts to thrive today. The first one is stand guard at the door of your mind. Now, how many of you can relate to when you look out at the state of the world, your mind feeling like this? I know that I can. And if we are the ones that are going to be expected to lead as educators other people whose minds are doing that, how likely are we to be effective at what we're doing? So stand guard at the door of your mind means being intentional, understanding yourself well enough, observing your own thought and feeling patterns to recognize when it's time to turn off social media, when it's time to turn off the 24-hour news cycle, when it's starting to get you into that spin of chaos and despair, knowing to put boundaries around that, or to put boundaries around those conversations that are bringing you down or raising your blood pressure. Quite frankly, this is when we need to be at our mental and emotional, peak performance. And I'm seeing a lot of people who are recognizing like, uh-oh, I have not been going to the mental emotional gym, and now I'm really recognizing that I'm out of shape. So, I'm really all about, I understand that budgets are tight, and in the new normal, the new status quo is the staff development piece, the mental and emotional wellness piece needs to be part of the new normal. It has got to be a priority. One slide. Thought to thrive, number 2, we're just going to adapt, is, here we go. Where focus goes, energy flows. So to illustrate this point, I want you to pretend that you are driving this car. Now, if you're driving and you're starting to skid, where should you focus? Should you focus on that pole there? Or should you focus on the open road, or at least the lane that you want to be in? Focus on the lane you want to be in, right? Focus on the open road. Why? Because where focus goes, energy flows. Where you're looking is where your car is going to go. It's just like this in life. So as the leader of your district, of your building, of your classroom, of your caseload, what you are focused on is where those folks are going to follow. And so we're kind of in a skid right now, right? It feels like we're in a skid. So it's more important than ever to focus on solution, possibility. And what's interesting is if you look at how much space that skinny little pole takes up in this whole big picture. And yet, most of us, that's what we focus on. And I'm going to pull Hermie back out because she's going to help me illustrate why. Hopefully my slides will cooperate too. Nope. There we go. Okay, so here's why Hermie is so helpful, is because you and I and Hermie all share something in common. We all have a lower brain structure, very similar lower brain structure. In fact, it's often called the croc brain, the alligator brain, the reptile brain, okay? And the job of this part of our brain is literally to keep us alive. It's our survival mechanism. And what the job of this part of the brain is to scan the environment and constantly be looking for threats. So this part of the brain loves it when everything is the same, rigid. This is kind of when you talk about fixed mindset. And the reason why is, and it's important, it's like, well, if something's different, if something's off, if something new, that new foreign element is entering our environment, it may be a threat. It may take our resources. We may not be alive, okay? What happens though is people, if they are stuck in thought and in emotional patterns in their lower brain, they will stay in toxic relationships, toxic work environments, they'll engage in toxic behaviors because at least they're the same. At least they're not different. What accessing and activating more of our higher brain is going to do is allow us to, rather than hitting that pole over again because it's the same, is to focus on the open road, focus on where we want to go. So people who are activating their higher brains, I'm going to wait on the slide here. Patience is a virtue. There we go. They are going to be able to see, to recognize that beyond post-traumatic stress, there's also, after crisis, the potential, the possibility for post-traumatic growth, where we can actually elevate our well-being beyond what it was in that initial status quo before the crisis event. So as an example, somebody who's stuck in that lower brain thought pattern is going to have a thought like this about, COVID-19. This is never going to go away. Like, this is the end of the world and it's never going to go away. And they're just going to be stuck there. Whereas somebody who's activating, they're going to have that mantra going over and over and over, right? We tell ourselves these stories, and this is how we wire ourselves to think and feel and behave. Okay, so they're going to have a mantra like that, like, this is terrible, this is the worst thing in the world. Versus somebody who's activating their higher brain, and the way that we do this is we ask ourselves better questions. The job of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, which we have, evolved beyond Hermie here. We have a midbrain and we have a higher brain. The job of our higher brain is to answer those better questions. So somebody that's asking, a question, activating their higher brain, is going to say, how can I become better, stronger, and more willing to make the changes that I probably was needing to make all this time? Okay? So, that's why asking better questions is going to give you better answers. Your job's brain is to answer questions. So that's why your thought to thrive number 3 is, how do I become self-full? So the reason why this is an important question is, who do we want teaching our kids? Who do we want educating and leading our kids? Do we want this version of Betsy, somebody who's burned out and fried? Or do we want somebody who is feeling fulfilled and mentally clear and emotionally ready to take on what's coming through those doors every day? You see, the most important thing that I did when I transformed myself, when I made that decision to transform after my family's crisis, was I put myself on the top of my to-do list, and I didn't feel guilty about it. So I asked my brain better questions at that time. What do I want to let go of that is no longer serving me? And what do I desire as my part of my world going forward? This would be great questions that we can ask right now as a collective. What I said no to at that time was feeling like I was running in the hamster wheel. What I said no to at the time was generational patterns of alcoholism and addiction. What I said no to at the time was people pleasing. What I said no to at the time was having too much stuff. What I said no to at the time was eating crappy food. What I said no to at the time was being addicted to the 24/7, news cycle and social media. And then what that allowed me to say yes to was doing yoga, was being in more harmony with myself, was practicing more self-care and relaxation, was eating healthier food, whole food, was having more presence and play with my children. And probably the most important was that personal empowerment piece, to claim my personal power. And what else I said yes to as time went on, and I worked with other folks, was creating an online course by an educator specifically for educators. And there's a few folks here who actually participated in this project. And the course is really designed to fill the gap that I've seen and I've heard complaints about from others in professional development in terms of this staff piece. The course is 9 modules. We do an introductory module, and then we cover the 8 M's as the professionals, as the adults, as the grown-ups of these aspects of our life that we need to be taken care of. So each module takes about 45 to 60 minutes. I think Lee's gonna put in the chat a link if you're interested in participating. And I knew that I didn't have all the answers to solve the problems and challenges in education, but I know a lot of really awesome, wise, warm, intelligent other folks who have parts of the solution pie, much like we're offering here today. So I have guest experts where I interviewed them, and you just get to listen and hear their stories, hear their lessons, hear their thoughts on how we focus on solution. These are all people who get it and who are in it and also are focused on solution. So if you have more questions about this program, if you want, you're interested in having me work with your staff or administrators, I would love to, get in right now and help support people, especially during this upcoming school year. And the message I want to leave you with is whether or not your district, is providing the mental and emotional support that you need, that the choice is yours. That I really hope, whether from me or somebody else, somebody here, that you really take the opportunity right now to say yes to yourself and transform this moment for yourself from a crisis to a personal and professional opportunity. Thank you.